Hello, everyone. My name is Chow Yo, and I'm the technical manager for this session, Integrating Nutrition and Gender in Food Environment Research Projects, chaired by Maureen Cheserick. Thank you for taking part in ANH 2024, and we look forward to a robust and interactive session today. Thank you so much. Over to you now, Maureen.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to our Learning Lab. The title of our Learning Lab is Integrating Nutrition and Gender in Food Environment Research Projects. My name is Maureen Cheserick. I'm the nutrition specialist for our AERC Learning Lab project Policy Analysis for Sustainable and Healthy Foods in African Retail Markets. Today, I'll be facilitating the session together with my colleagues, Mark Korir. Dr. Mark Korir is our agriculture economist and is our manager training at African Economic Research Consortium, where he coordinates our collaborative masters in agriculture and applied economics, that is CMI, and also he coordinates our Pash Farm project. Also, we'll have our gender specialist, Dr. Lanoy Maloy, and is our specialist for the Pash Farm project. This is the session outline. So today we are going to have Mark opening the session and giving the introduction to our Pash Farm project. He's also going to learn together with us on the retail market food environment. I will come in to maybe together we try to see how we can select metrics, tools, and methods in food environment research. And after this, Lanoy will come in now and help us integrate gender into food environment research. In between the sessions, the 3 sessions, we shall have quizzes. That is a poll after the retail market food environment session. We'll also have a poll session after the metrics, tools, and methods session. We'll also have a poll after the session on integrating gender into food environment research. We also requested that if you have any questions, you can put it on the chat. And after that, we're going to, so that to enable us to be able to understand how we can apply this integration of gender into nutrition programs, we're going to present a case study of our Pash Farm project. These are the learning outcomes of our session. We hope that by the end of the session, we should be able to appreciate and integrate multidisciplinary and gender responsive teams in food environment research. We should also be able to identify relevant nutrition metrics in tools and methods for food environment research. We should also be able to identify gender concepts and analysis relevant for food environment research. And finally, we are hoping that after the end of the session, we should be able to apply nutrition and gender analysis in retail market food environment. So now we are going to begin our session. So as I said earlier, we shall have 3 sessions where the first session will be presented by Mark, the second session by myself, and the third session by Lanoy Maloy. So I'm going to welcome Mark to now take us through, to provide a background about our Pash Farm project and also take us through the food environment research. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Members, all attendees, our organizers, I want to thank everyone for the efforts that you have done to ensure that this learning lab is a success. So let me begin by saying something about the AERC. Then after that, we will talk about the project and about the food environment research framework. So as Maureen has said, this is a lab that is organized by the African Economic Research Consortium. African Economic Research Consortium is a research and capacity building institution that is based in Nairobi with Sub-Saharan Africa mandate. So we were established in 1988, and what we do is try to do research and capacity building in the field of economics and also agricultural and applied economics. And when we say now agricultural and applied economics, we are actually in the domain of this project, the policy analysis for sustainable and healthy foods in African retail markets. Once we have done the research, we do communicate research outputs of policy relevance to the policy community. We believe that individuals need capacity. We also believe that institutions need capacity because individuals are, domiciled in, universities, in research and capacity building organizations, in think tanks, and so on. So we do a lot of capacity building, a lot of retooling, workshops, and so on to ensure that the individuals are able to do research for policy influence. Over the years, we have done mentorship to about 4,000 researchers in 35 countries and graduated actually close to 4,000 masters and about 400 PhD graduates in economics and agricultural applied economics. So I know I don't want to bore so much about AERC, but it's important that you know about our programs. We have our graduate programs. I want to single out what we coordinate: the collaborative masters in agriculture and applied economics. The others are mainly in mainstream economics. So we have a lot of research delivery mechanisms. And in this project, we do use what we call framework research, where we bring in expertise from Africa and without Africa to delve into research, you know, by pooling the skills from Africa and outside, so that we are able, you know, to be at the frontier of the research. Then we have country case studies, which apply, you know, the frameworks, the methodologies to specific countries, and also faculty research that is done mainly by faculty members in our network universities. Thesis research goes without saying. I think we are already aware about that. So in a nutshell, we summarize our capacity building approach in this diagram, where to the top right, we have training, bottom left, we have research, and bottom right, we have the policy outreach. So 3 main programs. Of course, we have all other elements that do support this, and we have institutions and networks. We don't do it alone in Nairobi. We have a vast network of researchers and think tanks that help us achieve the mark. So much about AERC. The PASH Farm is policy analysis for sustainable and healthy foods in African retail markets. This is the project that we are currently running. It follows what we call AFPON, the Agriculture and Food Policy Analysis for Nutrition Outcomes Research, which we did from 2016 to 2022. So we were actually, you know, delving into the field of nutrition, but the background, as you already know, is about economics. So there were a number of lessons that we learned, and this we learned actually a lot from the ANH 2018, 2019, and so on, when we met so many, you know, nutritionists, public health people, agriculture, you know, gender, economy. So we realized that it's not about economics, it's about multidisciplinarity, it's about interdisciplinarity. And this was a big lesson which we have infused in the PASH Farm project. So we are going to have this project until December 2025, when we hope to have generated good results that we can share with the policy community. So what's the PASH Farm about? It's about research on nutritious food markets for informed policy making, program design, and possibly better nutrition outcomes. We want to see issues of obesity, you know, stunting, wasting, and so on. Those are the aims at the end of the day, possibly reducing those kind of problems that we have in sub-Saharan Africa. In relation to the food environment, we are focusing on urban and retail markets. You know, for nutritious foods, we are thinking about fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, animal source proteins, fish, meat, milk, eggs, and so on. So this is the domain of our research, looking at retail markets, the food environment in urban and retail markets for nutritious foods. So the idea here is do the research and possibly look at policy issues surrounding or around availability, accessibility, affordability, and related metrics to low-income consumers, because we realize that malnutrition is still a problem, and therefore we want to see how can policy be used to influence access, you know, affordability, and so on for nutritious foods. So we use the Turner et al. Framework 2018 as the main anchor to help us to crystallize and, identify issues that could be researched where the problems are. And we recognize two main elements, that's the personal domain and the external domain. So in the personal domain, we have Tana et al. And I thank you, Tana, maybe you are here. This really helped us to look at issues of access, issues of affordability, convenience, desirability. Those are the main pillars of the personal domain that we are looking into. Issues to do with distance to markets, a mode of transport. How do people get to the market so that they are able to access the foodstuff, the nutritious foods that are available in the market? Issues to do with purchasing power. Are these products affordable? When we talk of milk, we talk of meat, fish, they are not always affordable. So we look at these markets and see what is it that stakeholders can do to make these foodstuffs available or affordable to them. Issues of convenience, we know that the generation today does not want to use a lot of power in cooking and preparing foodstuffs. So we want to look at the element of convenience. Is it taking time to prepare food? Is it quick? Is it easy? And that's why sometimes you find that the foods that are not as healthy are really, taken up by young people. They don't want to take time cooking and so on. So issues of convenience, we research around this. Finally, in relation to the personal domain, desirability, and in economics, we normally talk of tastes and preferences. Eat attitudes, things to do with culture. We know there are some cultures that they do not encourage consumption of certain nutritious foods. You might find it's very nutritious, but their culture could, hamper the uptake or desirability of foodstuffs. Let me go quickly to the external domain, and here we get an element of availability. Now, you may find the market is there physically, but you may not get a product that you would wish to buy. So under the external domain, we have the element of availability. Where are the sources of these foodstuffs? Are they available or they are not? No. Issues to do with pricing and the monetary value of the products, very much related to affordability. Issues to do with the vendor and the product properties, these nutritious foods, the vendors, what time do they open? Maybe they are not open the time, and Lanoi will say, is it easy for the woman or the lady who is probably taking care of the children, to access the foodstuff at the time she wants to get there? So issues of opening time, quality of the food, safety, food safety, is it highly processed or not? Do we have enough fiber in the foodstuff and so on? So these are some of the product properties that we want to look at in this project. Finally, in relation to the external domain, we have marketing and regulation. And here we see various stakeholders, particularly government, county governments, devolved units of government, making inroads here, like policies. What policy is there to support women vendors, maybe male vendors, young men and women in these markets? Are they there or they are not? What is the policy on probably even a supply of water, electricity, and so on to street vendors? Is it there or not? Is there something that can be done? So market regulation, issues to do with advertising, branding, and so on come in handy. So this is the framework that we use. And on the left side, we see it's like a continuum or a value chain where we are getting the product from some source which comes in that's under production, and then there could be the storage function, maybe there's some assembling functions, maybe at the farm gate or, in-room setups. And then, of course, issues of transportation and so on. And to the right-hand side, the element of, the acquisition, consumption, and ultimately what we present as the outcome of all these, the food system, all these interactions of the personal, external production domains to the outcomes of nutrition. So I want to almost conclude. I have already explained this. I don't think I will go back to those. In our project, we have 20 research teams, and based on what we learned, we said now we have to be multidisciplinary. So each of these teams has an economist, a nutritionist, gender specialist, and other specialists who may be necessary for the specific project. We dedicated 5 projects to be gender, but we also have gender objectives in many of the 20 projects. So it is something that we are purposeful. We want the project to be gender sensitive and hopefully also transformative. Of course, not blind. We have been in gender too, so not gender blind, sensitive at least, and probably even transformative. So here are our 20 projects. We have a total of 20 principal investigators, of whom 8 are female, composing 40%. And then because each project has many researchers in it, we have a total of 95 researchers, and 49 of them, composing 51%, are female. This is the spread of our projects. So you can see we are basically in sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa, Cameroon, Benin, Ghana, Eastern Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, and so on. Southern Africa towards Malawi, South Africa, Uganda in East, also Zambia, Zimbabwe. So we have 20 spread in that fashion, and we are happy about that because we don't want to leave any region out of the research. Thank you very much. I hope I've not bored you so much. I think we can have some 1 or 2 questions to see whether you are following me.
So let's just take like 1 minute to answer the question.
So thank you very much. Most of us have managed to answer, and I can see most of you got the answer. Accessibility. Thank you very much. We can move to the next one. Very good. I can see it was a bit hidden from our screen. So thank you very much. I can see the second question. True, and that is by 94%. I think I'm happy about that. It's a good pass. So thank you. Thank you. Back to you, Maureen.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think we can see the participants got the correct answer. Indeed, accessibility is in the personal domain, and also the others, the prices, the availability, and vendor product or properties are under the external domains. We'll be able to understand all this when we go through the metrics and methods. And then for the affordability, indeed, that is it's usually the interaction between prices and individual purchasing. It's very true. So now we're going to move to the next session. So our next session, I'm going to take you through the selected metrics, tools, and methods used in retail market food environment. And from our previous session, we noted that in our Patch Farm project, we really anchored, or the Turner et al. Framework really was guiding all our research. And the 20 projects that we had, we noticed that most of our researchers were choosing some of the methods and tools, and I'm going to take you through some of them. So the first part, we're going to look at the food environment, external and personal domains. So we picked on some of the tools or methods or metrics that our researchers used. And I'll also take you through some of the selected individual level nutrition metrics. And a bit before bringing in Lanoy, we're going to maybe integrate nutrition and gender. You notice that the first part, we were talking about food environment, and then we moved to nutrition, and then now we integrate together nutrition and gender in our last session. Okay, so why are we selecting? Why should we learn how to select the best metrics and tools and methods? You notice that when Mark was talking about the retail market, you find it's an interface. It's where people and the consumers are interacting with the food. And in this case, retail market food environments have an impact on diet quality. And we usually emphasize that, and if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, our main challenge is people consuming poor diets. And in this case, it is usually in the retail market environment. This one influences household supply, how much, what kinds of foods are we finding in the market. Our markets also influence the access. We talked about what is the distance to the market. What are we using to go to the market? Are we using people able to reach the market so that they're able to access the nutritious foods? And also, you notice that there's a lot of work around food environment, and this work is around researchers are trying to evaluate to understand the relationship between food environment, for instance, household food purchasing patterns, so, or even shopping and dietary behaviors. They also want to evaluate to understand the relationship between food environment, dietary intake, what kinds of foods are people taking, and how the food environment is also impacting on the nutritional status of individuals. And in this case, in most cases, you notice that the researchers have a challenge, especially identifying the best metrics to maybe assess purchasing patterns, dietary behaviors, or even those indicators on nutritional status. So this session, we are going to discuss on which are the best metrics so that we can use, or which are the best tools, or even which methods should we use so that we are able to really understand this relationship between food environment and also the work we are looking at. So these are some of the terms. Therefore, let's first understand the terms, and I've provided you with the reference there. The first term is the methods. What are methods? These are general procedures for collecting and analyzing quantitative and qualitative data. You find that in food environment research, we are collecting quantitative data, and we are also qualitative data. So you should be able to know which are these methods. For example, here you can see somebody can decide to use surveys. You can also use observations. You can also do market mapping. You can also do marketplace audits. So these are the methods here. Then for tools, now we're talking about instruments specifically developed to collect and analyze quantitative and this qualitative data. For example, in nutrition, for example, the tools that we usually use are 24-hour recall to be able to understand the diet somebody has taken for the past 24 hours. In market surveys, you can also choose to choose tools like price comparison tool, or you can even use produce desirable tool if you want to understand the desirability part of the personal domain. Then for the metrics now, we are talking about the parameters, indexes, and indicators that are used to measure, compare, or track performance of in the outcomes. And in this case, for Patch Farm, some of our researchers were now trying to understand the impact, nutritional status outcomes. And for example, for when it comes to food environment, you can use cost of diet, you talk about market diversity index, and many others indices we shall look at. So, but it's important to note that this classification system is not always distinct. Yeah, sometimes it's not even be able to differentiate the tools and metrics is somehow challenging. Yeah, so we shall go through some of the metrics. Yeah, so we'll start by us looking at the first dimension. When Mark was taking us through the Turner et al. Framework, we talked about the availability dimension, we talked about the accessibility dimension under the two domains. So in the first domain, availability, and this is a dimension, sorry. So this is under the external domain. In our project, Patch Farm, we use the tool seasonal calendar of availability. And in the nutritious foods that we were assessing, we were animal source foods. So our researchers were looking at animal source foods like meat, eggs, fish, and many other animal source foods. We also had researchers looking at fruits and vegetables. We also had two projects that were analyzing biofortified foods. And in this case, we were looking at iron-rich beans, and also the orange flesh sweet potatoes, and also the yellow maize. So in this case, so now when you're looking at if you want to understand if these foods are available in the market, that is the animal source foods, fruits and vegetables, and even the biofortified foods, some of our researchers now are using the seasonal calendar. And this one is used to identify nutritious foods that are available in the retail market. And it really provides us information about seasonality, which are the available foods in January, in February. I'll give you an example. And for the methods that were used, mostly we were using participatory approaches like the focus group discussions, where we had discussions in the retail markets, we had discussions with the retailers, we had discussions with the wholesalers, we also had focus group discussions with the vendors. Another approach we were using was the key informant interviews. So for us to be able to also have, to be able to know the available foods throughout the seasons, we also had interviews for example, in Kenya, we had interviews with the county staff, like the directors for agriculture, directors for markets, like that, so that you're able to get information about these foods. And it's also important as researchers or even practitioners also to verify with direct observations. You can take photos. So like if you are to collect information about any foods available, say in January or in February, that you need to take photos and also be able even to have a chat. So we say the seasonal calendar really can help you now to access, it will be able to show access to different foods in the market, food environment, and they can also be able to show us the seasonal fluctuation in these in food prices. So this is an example of a seasonal calendar that was developed by one of the research groups in the Patch Farm project in Kenya, Eldoret. So you can see this is a chart, a pictorial. It can really help you as a producer, like a producer, for example, who is producing fruits and vegetables, for example, from this seasonal calendar. It can also help the wholesaler, the person who is supplying, or even the retailer, and even you as the consumer. So you can see here as the seasonal calendar, you can see here for the fruits and vegetable project, they were able to map and be able to tell that in January and February in Eldoret town, you can be able to access bananas, you can also be able to access fruits. And for vegetables, you can be able to access such kinds of vegetables like cabbages and kales and many others that I've not presented here. Then also, like for example, in March, April, for consumers, they'll be able to get such information like these are the fruits and vegetables that I can be able to get in March and April. Same thing in May and June, July and August, September to October, and November to December. So you find that the seasonal calendar really can provide very important information so that the suppliers can know which fruits, for example, or which vegetables or which animal source foods can be available to the market during these different seasons. And at the intervention levels, like at the program level or even at policy level, it is also very important because you can suggest intervention. Like for example, if it is, we find that we have very few fruits and vegetables at different seasons, or even other different or animal source foods, you can, for instance, we can advise the producers to use quality seeds to improve production. So how can the seasonal calendar can really help them to be able to know what are the available quality seeds. And even the seed producers can also ensure that we can have quality seeds, short season crops during this season. It can also benefit us at adopting new technologies to improve production or even marketing. Like, for example, if you find that in July and August, we are not having certain fruits and vegetables, how do the people who are now selling, who are able to even, like, you can even have imports, or you can try to make sure that we get fruits and vegetables during that season to be sold on those different markets. And when it comes to the government now also, it can also inform the governments to provide subsidies for inputs to grow like for example, in terms of biofortified iron-rich beans, for instance, in our project, we find that say biofortified iron-rich beans are not available in May or June, or they're not available in November and December, or the producers are not able to produce because they do not have adequate finances. So the government can actually provide subsidies so that we can increase production and also increase consumption, marketing, and also, of course, increase consumption of such biofortified iron-rich beans, or even say vitamin A-rich biofortified orange flesh sweet potatoes. And of course, for us nutritionists, this is very important. tool because it helps us for nutrition promotion, because we can now tell consumers, you see, in January and February, these are the available fruits and vegetables. These are the available animal source products, like that, and many other food products. So that is the seasonal calendar. It is a tool that helps us. It's under the personal domain and in the availability. Our next tool is for the dimension availability is under the external domain is now the market diversity. Most of our researchers were also using the market diversity to be able to determine the food groups that were represented in that markets. So we had our researchers having doing their research in different retail markets. So this one, the market diversity can really help you to understand the market food groups that are available. You have the 10 food groups. So in this tool, you ask yourself, are all the 10 food groups available in the market? I'll show you the food groups. And it is one thing to avail the foods in the market, and it's another thing to consume. So are they also consumed by the consumers? So in your research now, you're able to do, that is, you can do a food vendor audit, or you can do an inventory. So you go to the market and identify all the foods that are in the available, all the 10 food groups in the market, and be able to know which ones are available for consumers to consume. And then you also ask yourself now, from the 10 food groups, are the nutritious foods available? So for us in Patch Farm, we were interested in the animal source foods, we were interested in the fruits and vegetables, and even biofortified foods. So in that case, are they nutritious? So our researchers were now interested at looking at, are they available in the market, so that we can be able to advise the consumers. We can also advise the retailers. We can also advise the wholesalers, or even the policymakers. So this is these are the 10 food groups I was talking about, and you can see the food with them. So here the first group, definitely you go as a researcher now, you list, do we have cereals and starches, and which are these cereals and starches in the market? For the pulses, which are they there? The beans, the cowpeas and the rest, the nuts and seeds, milk and dairy products, meats, all those, the eggs, the dark green leafy vegetables. So for you as the researcher now, you take all of them, the 10 food groups. And for us, in Patch Farm now, we are interested, do we have milk and dairy products in the market? Do we have meat, poultry, meat and fish in the market? Do we have eggs? And then for the fruits and vegetables now, do we have dark green leafy vegetables like amaranthus, or African leafy vegetables? Do we have pumpkin leaves? And then others now, the other vegetables and those ones that are rich in vitamin A. And then for the fruits again, we also look at the fruits. Do we have those fruits that are rich in vitamin A? Do we have those fruits that are the other fruits, we refer them others now, the bananas, the pineapples. So this one is really good because if you do a market diversity, you're able to know which are these food groups, and it can really inform the policy makers at the county level, for instance, and so that you're able to, if the foods are not available in the market, then now we can improve transport and logistics, for instance, the market to improve supply. Or you can even, for us, nutrition is now, if the foods are not available in the market, then we can even do social nutrition behavior change, and we try promoting those nutritious foods, so that even we do capacity building to the retailers and wholesalers, so that, or even the producers, so that they can ensure that we have such kinds of foods in the markets. The other tool is the first one was now the accessibility, that is the personal domain. So we just picked on the two domains under the external domain, that is seasonal calendar and the market diversity. Another one that we were using in Patch Farm is accessibility, to measure accessibility. So our researchers were using under this personal domain, they used the household dietary diversity score. And this one is used to determine foods consumed from different food groups. And the purpose we use it as a proxy to measure household food access. And we usually do household surveys. So most of our researchers now are doing the household surveys to really understand, are the people consuming the foods? We say the foods are available in the retail markets. Is it translating to them now consuming these foods at the household level? And it's the same 12 food groups that are used now to calculate the household dietary diversity. Are they available? Are they consuming this? So you can as well, and this one now you take a 24-hour recall of foods and beverages consumed at the household, and then now you be able to calculate the household data diversity score for that household. Then we have the next tool, the next matrix under the accessibility also. You can also, to be able to capture information around behaviors, that is how people behave when there is food access or when there is no food. You can also use the household food insecurity access scale. I think this is some scale that most researchers use, and it enables you to understand the household access in certain foods, especially when there is hunger or there's a problem. So this one usually we construct it from a short questionnaire, and this short questionnaire consists of 9 occurrence questions and 9 frequent occurrence questions that should be answered according to the household foods experience in the previous 30 days. So I'm going to provide you with a reference that can really help you to really get more details about this tool. The next tool, the next metric that we also used is the food consumption scores. This is, it measures the accessibility dimension. It's under the personal domain. This one aggregates, the FCS aggregates household food level data on diversity and frequency of food groups consumed over previous 7 days, which is then now weighed according to the relative nutritional value. Here, I'm going to show you an example after this. And the purpose of these food consumption scores actually is to enable you to capture information about the usual household diet. What is the household taking? What kinds of foods are they taking? And it is asking you to recall what foods you consumed over the past 7 days. I'll show you one. And for the method, you provide a questionnaire. Again, you provide a questionnaire and you ask the respondents about the frequency of the household's consumption of the 8 food groups. So I'm going to, in the next slide, I'm just going to show you these 8 food groups that we will be asking the question: did you consume these in the past 1 week? So it is used as a proxy indicator of household caloric availability, and the food groups containing nutritional dense foods, you'll notice that they're usually given more weight. And in this case, such as animal products, they're usually given greater weight than those ones that are less nutritious, like the tubers, like our cassavas, the potatoes, like that. So in this case, our researchers were also trying to use this in our study to enable them to understand are our consumers consuming these nutritious foods. And the thresholds are usually like, if the score is between 0 to 21, we say it's poor. And if it's between 21.5 to 35, it's borderline. And if the score is more than 35, it will say it is acceptable. So here is an example of a food consumption score here. You can see the food groups here. The first food group is the main staples. So like mostly in sub-Saharan Africa, we have the maize, we have sorghum, millets, and the rest. And the weight is usually 2. And pulses, the weight is 3. The vegetables, the weight is 1. Fruits, 1. The ones I've highlighted here are the ones that we are investigating under our Patch Farm project: the vegetables, the fruits, the meats, and the milk. The other ones below are sugar and oil. Yeah, so you can see the weight for the main staples is 2, the pulses is 3, the vegetables is 1, the fruits is 1. The more weight is given to the animal source foods. So like if you took, we said we asked the household how many number of days they've eaten this food, the main staples. For instance, here you can see this table. If they took them for 7 days, so if the weight is 2, the number of days is 7, so the score will be 2 times 7, so it will be 14. So the score will be 14. Then if the household consumed pulses just once in a week, then it will be 3 times 1, which is 3, the same thing. For vegetables, if they've taken vegetables twice in a week, so it will be 2 times 1, 2. And for fruits and vegetables, if you ask, and they didn't take any fruits and vegetables during that week, it will be 0. So the score will be 1 times 0, it will be 0. And for the meats, the fish, all of them, the flesh foods, if they took once in a week, then you say 4 times 1, and then you get 1. Same thing for milk. So the total score, for the total score, you add all of them. That is the score for the main staples, the pulses, and everything, and you get a score. And then now you compare the total score with the thresholds. So the next tool that we're going to talk about is now the food frequency questionnaire. So again, in PashFarm, we were able to also, some of our researchers were able to use the food frequency questionnaire. And you can see an example there is a 7-day fruits and vegetables. This was used by a group that was investigating fruits and vegetables in the retail markets. And this is it. So you list all the fruits. Say, for if you're working on fruits, you list all the fruits. You can see all the fruits in the market. And if you remember, you're using also the calendar. So here you ask the consumer, for instance, amount in a week. How many times have they taken in a week? Is it never? You just tick never once, 2 to 3 times a week, 4 to 7 times a week. And where do you get them from? Is it from the market or you get it from your own farm? Yeah, then you also indicate, do you think it's adequate or not? This is just a sample of a food frequency questionnaire that was used by some of our researchers. So it's just a checklist of foods and beverages that you ask your consumer how many times they've used it. This is a qualitative one. You can also have a semi-quantitative food frequency questionnaire. This one now, you can also even collect information, the portion sizes. You get to know how many servings of this, how many servings of fruits and vegetables, how many servings of meat, how many servings of fish, like that. Of course, these are standardized portions that you can also ensure that you've included in your study. Again, this is here, I've just given you an example of from one of our projects in PashFarm. Our researchers used this to, you can even go deeper. For instance, this one is the frequency of purchase and consumption of fish from fish markets. So you see, these researchers, they really wanted to understand how the frequency of purchasing of fish, and is the purchasing now translating to them consuming the fish. So again, you can see, and this one now, they wanted to investigate whether the forms of fish the consumers were consuming, is it fresh, is it dried, is it fried, is it salted and dried? And then just you can have your own, or smoked fish, like that. As you can see from these findings from one of the PashFarm project, you can notice that actually fried fish, people take it more than 3 times even in a week. So you can use the food frequency questionnaire to enable you really understand the patterns of consumption of different foods that are available and accessible to your consumers from retail markets. The other dimension is affordability. So under the food environment framework, you can notice that affordability is something else that really you find that in most of our work, preliminary findings from PashFarm, you notice that indeed most of the consumers were not affording most of the food. So like one of our projects was using the cost of a healthy diet as an index or a tool to measure the costs. So this one now, you use it as a measure of physical and economic access to healthy diets. And it's like you get the prices of the food products and you compare with the recommendations, like food-based dietary guidelines for the country. And you establish all the prices of foods available in the market and those ones that are commonly purchased, and those ones that you think they should be included in the diverse diet. So these ones now, you use the food-based dietary guidelines for countries. And lastly, we have the other domains like convenience and desirability. These ones also, we also used in PashFarm. This one is the personal domain. So like some of our researchers were doing market mapping. You also did sensory surveys. Some used the produce desirability tool. And we also had some of our researchers doing willingness to pay and choice experiments, especially for those ones who are investigating the biofortified foods, like the iron biofortified beans, and also the biofortified orange flesh sweet potato and the yellow maize. So here you understand it's like you use these tools now to enable you to understand the preferences. Are they preferring to buy the iron fortified beans, or are they preferring to eat or to buy and eat those the other beans that are in the market? Or even when it comes to orange flesh sweet potato, the biofortified, are people preferring to eat these ones as compared to the other sweet potatoes? Is it because they like the taste, they like the color, like that? So we also you can use these desirability tools to enable you to understand this dimension of the food environment. And These are some of the selected individual nutrition metrics that you can also use in your work, like at the individual level. Remember, and using the food environment framework, you also have that impact. Is it impacting on the nutritional status of the individual? So for example, here, you can also use the minimum dietary diversity score. Say this one is for women usually. So it measures the number of food groups out of a total of 10 food groups consumed by women of reproductive age. And in this case, you want to we usually use women here, women of reproductive age, as a proxy indicator. It tells us if are they meeting the micronutrient, what is the quality of the diet? Are they meeting the micronutrient needs? That is, it's just a proxy of adequate diet quality. So out of the 10 food groups, if the woman consumes more than 5 food groups, then you can say they are consuming a diet quality. Here I've showed you some of our work that we had done before, where we're looking at the determinants of dietary diversity among women of reproductive age in some county here in Kenya. And you'll find that actually we might have foods available in the market or even on produce, yes, but it's possible that they are also not consuming. So this indicator can really help you to understand the diet quality of women. Another tool that you can use is for children now. Again, you can use the minimum dietary diversity score for children. This one is from WHO. And this one now has, you group them into 7. So number of food groups out of the total 7 food groups now. And in this case, because some children are still breastfeeding, others are not breastfeeding. So this one, including the breast milk. So you want to understand what is the dietary diversity for children. Are they consuming quality diets? So this one, again, you also combine, you can also use the minimum dietary diversity score plus the minimum meal frequency so that you're able to compute the minimum adequate diet, so that you also have the minimum adequate diet indicator. And this one, you can say a child has consumed an adequate diet when they have consumed more than 4 food groups in a day. That is 4 out of 7. This is an example of there's an example of 24. So here, for you to be able to come up with the minimum dietary diversity score for the children and for the women, you use a qualitative 24-hour recall. And I've given you an example here for the children and some of the work we had done before. So this one, you group the grains and cereals, you group the legumes and seeds. You also have the dairy products, you have eggs, you have flesh foods, we have vitamin A rich fruits and vegetables, and the fruits and vegetables. And remember, children are also breastfeeding. So in that case, if they consume more than 4, then you can say they have consumed a qualitative diet. So this is a quality diet. That is a diet that is rich in micronutrients. Another tool, so we also have some, if is now, like we talked about, the food is available, it's accessible to the consumers. Is it impacting on the diet quality? Now, is it also impacting on their nutritional status? And we talk about nutritional status is whether are they undernourished. So we have some metrics for undernutrition. We have indicators for undernutrition, and then we also have indicators for overnutrition. And for example, here, I'm just going to highlight some of them, and I'll provide you with a reference that you can read in more details. Like, for example, the low birth weight. So it can also tell us that one is a birth weight and an infant for infants, and it measures now the abnormal gestational weight gain due to like for maternal nutrition, it will always impact on the birth weight. So again, you can use this if you're doing a study around, if you're evaluating the food environment. We can also look at stunting rates. This one, I think most of us researchers are familiar with this. You can also look at wasting. You can also look at underweight, or also maternal BMI. So for stunting, it measures the chronic effects of intakes of diet of low quality and diets an infection since birth. So this one is good indicator for, especially if you're doing studies on children. They stunted, that is, you look at the height, you measure the height and look at it against the age, and you can compute the Z-scores. Then for wasting, that is the weight for height. Again, you can also check. And this one measures the wasting part now, measures the acute and recent malnutrition if the children are not accessing adequate or consuming adequate diet. recently, just acute, just recent, not for too long, for standing it for a longer period of time, you can also use this indicator to, if they are wasted. And also you can use, the another metric is the underweight. This one is the weight for age, yeah. That is, you want to know the percent of children which are low for their height, for their age. This one measures undernutrition, which is associated with low intakes of food of inadequate quantity and quality. So these the main ones that are commonly used now is the stunting, wasting, and underweight. So, and then of course you can also look at the maternal BMI. So this is where now you look at the weight and the height, you divide the weight over the height squared, and actually it will tell us whether the mother is underweight, or it can give you the scores for the BMI. That is the nutritional status of the mother. Is she underweight? Is she normal, or is she obese? Like that. And you can always compare with the other metrics. So, and then something else that is really very important when you say measuring the weight, the height, we really need to follow the WHO standard protocols for taking body measurements as researchers, because if you do not measure it correctly, again, it will give us a wrong measurement. So as you're supposed to select the correct metrics, and of course, at the same time, you have to follow the right protocols for taking body measurements, because if you do not take them properly, again, you might say most of the children are stunted, or most of the children are underweight, and perhaps the errors are with you as the researcher. Yeah. So the next one is now those who are undernutrition for overnutrition. For example, we said earlier that some research is looking at evaluating food environment with relation to, say, obesity. Yeah, so you can also look at the metric of overweight, for instance. You can look at if it's overweight, or you can look at the waist to height ratio. You can also look at the maternal BMI, I said earlier. You can also look at you can measure the waist circumference, and you can also measure the weight to hip ratios. These are some of the indicators that can really tell us whether, that is the overnutrition indicators, and they measure whether somebody is having imbalance, that is on the upper side, as compared to the undernutrition indicators that we had talked about earlier. Then again, in your research, your food environment research, you may also be interested to try to evaluate if there are any micronutrient deficiencies. And these are some of the indicators. And in most sub-Saharan countries, we have nutrition deficiencies around iron intake, that is anemia. So you may want to, if you want to understand iron status and anemia status, you can also measure the levels of iron. That is, you can just check the HB, you can all look at the ferritin levels and many other indicators. And for vitamin A status, again, you can also look at the retinol levels, the concentrations, or even the breast milk retinol. So depending on the kind of study that you are undertaking, you can also, it really, like for the vitamin A status, I see researchers commonly using it, and you want to measure whether an individual is deficient of vitamin A. You can even do physical assessments. You check if there are visual spots, or even if the individual is having any night blindness. And also zinc deficiency is also a problem here in sub-Saharan Africa. So you may want to look at the zinc status of the individual, and in this you can look at the plasma levels of serum. And then for iodine also, because iodine is also a problem here in sub-Saharan Africa. And in this case, you can look at the median urinary iodine levels. So these are just some of the indicators, and especially I've just provided you with some of the, because these are some of the deficiencies that are really common in our sub-Saharan Africa. And it is indeed very important for us researchers to know which ones we are supposed to evaluate and which ones should I select as a researcher. And that is it. So before we have a poll question, and before I also invite Lanoy to take us to the next session, and you notice that we really need to also understand, we need to integrate nutrition and gender. Why nutrition and gender are inextricably linked. They are together. You cannot separate nutrition from gender. If you want to improve any nutrition outcomes in your work, in your project, you must have them, the two of them. And I think today we shall be able to understand how we're supposed to link the two when we're doing any nutrition project. And gender equity is really a key in ending malnutrition. All the nutrition problems we talked about, whether undernutrition, overnutrition, we really have to bring on board gender. And gender inequality contribute to inadequate nutrition and also food insecurity. So for us to be able to, if you're doing any studies around nutrition or food security, food and nutrition security. If you want to understand more about women, about children, we really have to bring together gender nutrition. And if you look at the current research, really there are knowledge gaps about how gender influences the different dimensions of food environment. And in sub-Saharan Africa, you notice that actually most of the time we leave out gender and we look at gender as just a variable. So it's important for us to really consider gender issues in the two food environment domains that we talked about, that's the external domains and also the personal domains. And we should be able to help you understand this, bring them together in this in our learning session. And why should we focus on gender nutrition? If you these are just some of the examples. Like, for example, if you look at the vulnerabilities of women and children, if you look at the UNICEF conceptual framework on undernutrition, you notice that women and children are more nutritionally vulnerable. So in that case, for us to be able to understand, and if you really want to improve the nutrition outcomes for women and children, for everybody in the household, we really need to bring together gender nutrition. Number two is that women are really key to agriculture and nutrition. Women are the ones who play a lot of roles in agriculture, in nutrition, and many other sectors. So we really need to bring in the issues of bring together nutrition and gender. And of course, something else that we really need to really emphasize that gender inequalities that stand in the way of good nutrition. There's so many socially constructed roles, there's so many things around, and we shall really help you when we'll be looking at one of our Pash Farm case study. You will see some of the inequalities that really impede nutrition, or for us improving the nutrition outcomes for, say, women and even children, even for the men and boys in our families. So we also want to bring together gender nutrition so that we will be able, in alignment with the international commitments to gender. That is, we have the SDG goal number 5 on gender. So something else that I wanted also to note, that this is some of we usually, in most of the nutrition programming, we usually bring together gender in some of the nutrition sensitive sectors like agriculture. It's a lot in agriculture. We also do it in health. We also do it in education and WASH, that is water, sanitation, and hygiene, because they really directly impact on nutritional outcomes. So in that case, we really have to really ensure that we are integrating gender and nutrition together. And when it comes to research, for us, again, we really need to understand how we need to do gender analysis so in your data, so that you're able to improve nutrition outcomes. And in this case, we say, for when you're doing any nutrition analysis, you need to understand who eats what and when, who has access and control of the food resources, what validated tools and indices. We just talked about the methods, tools, and metrics. Are you using validated tools? And which ones will really help us to better understand the nutrition dynamics within our household? And you may want to ask yourself again, if we're linking gender and nutrition, what research team composition is needed? So these are just the main takeaways from this session. And I believe you're able to, by the end, you're able to select appropriate metrics, tools, and methods in food environment research. And we will be able, I hope you'll be able to integrate nutrition and gender to improve nutrition and health outcomes. So next we shall have some 2 poll questions, one on, So please, you can have, we'll have the first poll question. I can see 98% have answered the first question on which is select the most suitable metrics that can help you identify foods sold by food vendors in the market. Can see I can see 33% of us have picked on the seasonal calendar of availability. 4% have picked on household dietary diversity score. And then 64% picked on the market diversity index. So the correct answer here is the market diversity index. If you find that the market diversity index is the one we said we have the 10 food groups. So that you, as the researcher now, you use the 10 food groups to check whether all those foods are available in the market. The first food group, let's say the starch, the cereals and the starches, are they available in the market? Or the animal source foods, are they available in the market? The fruits and vegetables, are they available in the market? So that is market diversity index. It tells us, are these foods available in the market, and will our consumers be able to access them and be able to consume? So the answer is market diversity index. And I can see that 2% picked on the seasonal calendar of availability. For the seasonal calendar, this one we said, it's just like you want to know which foods are available in the market for different seasons. Yeah. So in that case, you saw the example where we were giving an example of, say, fruits and vegetables, which are the fruits available in January to February, March, and April. So you can always modify this. You can, depending on the food, the seasons that you can see in that in your country. Then for the household, I can see 4% picked on the household dietary diversity score. This one is not the correct answer, because for the household dietary diversity score, we said we have the 12 food groups. So you have all the 12 food groups, and you list all of them, the 12, and you ask the household if they were able to consume all these food groups in a week, and you use a qualitative 24-hour recall. So this one, I said in the slides, we provided the source, the reference where you can get the information about these metrics, tools, and methods. It's in one of our AERC working paper on metrics, tools, and methods 2022. Then we also have, I can see question 2 on which of the following nutrition outcome indicators measures acute and recent malnutrition associated. Excellent. I can see 40% picked on wasting. Yeah. So wasting, and I'm happy nobody underweight, we had 38%. Okay, for wasting, yeah, the correct answer is wasting, in the sense that we said for wasting, here you want to measure, if it's a child, you want to check whether they were exposed to acute, that is lack of food just recently, that is acute and recent malnutrition, that when they were not taking good quality food recently, like that, so just wasted. And then for stunting, the answer is stunting is not correct, in the sense that stunting is like lack of food for a long time, chronic malnutrition. So I think we can end there. I can see there's a question on the chat. Can these software tools be modified if we want to use in other? Yeah, most of these tools, you can modify them depending on where you are, because foods are different everywhere. Is it available on the portal? Yeah, I think we should have sent the link. I don't know how this can be shared, but most of these WHO, FAO tools are available. And I also noted that some of the tools are there's a learning lab. You can also check, there's a learning lab on cost of a healthy diet here in ANH. You can also register and also participate in that, so that you're able to understand some of the tools and metrics that are used to measure the food environment.
Okay, thank you, Maureen, for that. That was great. We've learned a lot, and we are certainly going to watch what's on our plate when we have lunch in an hour or so. So welcome. We want to think about issues around gender and the food environment research. And to help us with that, bridging that gap, we want to discuss certain gender concepts, some words that we hear bandied about, and how they relate to food and nutrition. So just a quick overview, we're going to talk about these concepts in about 10 minutes or so. Then we're going to talk about gender analysis, and then we have a case study to test your knowledge before you go for lunch. Great. So the big question, what is gender? Everybody keeps talking about gender, gender, gender. What is this gender? So when we think about gender, it's actually about the roles we have in our society. So what are these roles? What responsibilities do we have? What rights do we have? How should we behave? And also what entitlements? And it comes out as these are what is assigned to us as men and women. If we even want to desegregate further, we can talk about young men, young women, boys and girls. So that is what we have as gender. Very often, gender is thought of as women. It's not. It's about men and women, young men, young women, boys and girls in a society. So just to help us a little bit about that, we want to use a little bit of a table to see what do we mean when we think about gender, versus what do we mean when we talk about sex. So sex is the biological features we are born with. So often people are born male and female. It's something that is in nature. So this is something that is static. When we think about gender, it's about the social construct. So what it means to be a man in a particular community in Kenya, it differs from another community in Kenya. So the community that I come from, women have certain roles and responsibilities. Women build houses. But in another community, maybe where Maureen comes from, perhaps that's not the case. So it differs. It's dynamic. So it's not like the biological aspects of sex. It differs from community to community. It is dynamic. What it means to be a woman today differs very much from what it means to be what my grandmother faced or my mother even faced as a woman. So these things change with time, and we have to be cognizant of that, especially when we think about issues around food and nutrition. I believe it was Mark or maybe it was Maureen who talked about now how it is in the environment now. People want food that is quick, easy to make. We don't have that much time dedicated to making food or having those domestic chores fulfilled. So this is at the back of our mind. We cannot really, as Maureen said, extract gender and nutrition. These things go together because of the roles and responsibility assigned to men and women in the society. So I think we've distinguished around that, and you can always put in the chat. We're monitoring the chat in case there's a question here, but we can talk about gender as something that is contextual. As I said, it depends on what time frame or what country that you're coming into. Very quickly, I wanted us to talk about these kind of concepts that we're going to talk about, especially as it relates to our research and the research that we've done in PASHFAM, talking about gender sensitivity. How are we responsive? How do we address, or what is even a gender issue, and how do we address them? So what do we mean when we talk about gender insensitive research or gender insensitive food and nutrition projects? What we mean is that there's a failure or there's an issue to identify differences based on gender. Remember, we said gender, these social constructs within the society. So a gender insensitive research project or program fails to understand or fails to identify these gender differences and how these may create barriers or structure opportunities, giving entitlement to one gender over the other. So what do I mean by this? For example, if you're maybe working in a camp or working in a particular area and you wanted to recruit or have an intervention around relief food, a gender insensitive research project would not understand what are the roles and responsibilities of men and women in this society, or in this particular camp, who comes to collect the relief food, what other responsibilities do they have? What time do they go to collect water? What time do they take animals to pasture? So if you fail to address or identify these kind of roles, you might be having an intervention that leaves out one gender or disadvantages one gender over the other. And so you could create even a gender issue within your intervention. So it's very, very important to be sensitive, to understand these kind of differences. So what we don't want is an insensitive research. You need to be able to understand what are the roles and responsibilities within this community and how might my research affect, or how can I understand and work within those parameters. So this is quite important. So moving on, we have research that can be gender aware or is gender sensitive. This one is able to understand what are the different roles and responsibilities for men and women, for young men, young women, and even boys and girls within the society. Who goes to collect water? Who picks up the relief food? Who distributes it? What is eaten within the family? So this is at least gender aware. You are able to understand this, but with gender aware research or work, it doesn't go beyond this. So you're able to identify or at least be cognizant. Boys collect firewood, young girls collect water. So you are aware of this, but you don't go beyond that. So it's also a bit of a challenge because in a way you are aware, but you're not addressing the issues. So when we talk of gender responsive, this is where a certain research project or program is able to identify these kind of differences. They understand that it exists and how they arise, and it's able to respond to these gender issues. So what do I mean by that? A gender responsive project or intervention means that it acknowledges these roles. So when maybe your intervention is in a particular camp and you're distributing relief food, or you have an intervention where you want to have different food and nutrition education for men and women, you have a profile, or you understand at this certain time men go to the pasture with animals, and women maybe go and collect water. So you are very aware. And when you have this food and nutrition education outreach, you have it within the time that men and women are free. That is a gender responsive intervention or approach or a program. So it's very important, if you want your work, your research or your project to work, to be cognizant of this and to respond to it. So this is what we call gender transformative. And then we move into gender transformative. This is where you go beyond identifying and responding to gender issues. At the gender transformative stage, you actually look at what are the root causes of this kind of inequality or the roles that have been assigned. So is it because in this particular camp, or is it because of a drought that these roles are assigned, and how can you change them? That's the gender transformative approach. You are able to go down to that granular level and understand what are the root causes and to change them. So this is the end game. This is the pinnacle, trying to look for these gender transformative approaches. But it means going to the root causes, not just identifying them, but addressing these root causes as well. So we'll move on. I think that we've talked a little bit about identifying these gender issues, but what is a gender issue? I'm sure many of you are asking the same. And I'm glad you're asking yourselves that. A gender issue is something that stems from societal beliefs or perceptions. So there are certain cultural norms or certain gender norms that are guided by the society about how women and men should behave, how boys and girls should behave. And this can occur anywhere in the society, whether it's in the community, whether it's in the family level, workplace, any place that is a community or society. And these gender issues are very, can be a challenge because it can result as one need or the needs of one gender being met at the expense of others. And it can manifest in a few things. It can manifest in gender discrimination or even stereotypes that boys are supposed to be in this way or girls are not supposed to do this. And then that's when we see things like boys not being able to cook because these gender issues inform the behavior of boys and girls. It can also come out in gender violence or even inequity. So this is what a gender issue is, and it can be very challenging because if it's not addressed, it can bring about the manifestations that we've talked about: discrimination, stereotypes, or even violence. So we've talked a lot about these concepts and we've talked about how to identify issues, but how do we go about it? I'm sure you're asking yourselves, what are the tools for this? And I'm glad you're asking yourself this because we're going to show you a few tools that you can use in your research or in programs or initiatives that you want to derive in food and nutrition contexts that can help you to be able to identify what are the gender issues. So in this way, I wanted us to look at what we call a gender analysis. And a gender analysis is a systematic examination. We talk about a systematic examination because there's a pattern to it. So it's an examination of the different activities and roles that men and women have in the society, or young men and young women, depending on what your project is about, or even boys and girls, depending on, again, on your research project or your intervention. So this focus on power relations relating to who has power, who has control, who has ownership, if it's land, if it's food, financial resources, and who pays for what, who makes decision around food, who makes decision about what the family consume. This will really be very, very useful in examining these patterns. And also, what is the authority and social legitimacy, so that you're putting, when you have your intervention, you can see who has access to what and how maybe you can remedy that. This kind of analysis is really very key in understanding gender division of labor and the decision-making power, and especially as it relates to food availability and access. So if you're looking at maybe who makes consumption decisions in the home, you can be able to ask who makes decisions about what we eat at home, but at the same time, who pays for that? So understanding that can really be very useful in being able to comb out these gender issues and being able to address them. So we've talked about that systematic examination of power relations, gender relations, and there are various tools that can be used to tease out these gender issues. And for today, we will just examine very briefly some few tools, but there are a lot of resources out there, books, very useful books to talk about different gender analysis frameworks. But for today, we're going to talk about three, which can help us at least in a variety of ways. We're going to talk about the Harvard Analysis Framework. Then we're going to talk about the MOSA. Sometimes it's also called Caroline MOSA Framework. And then a third one, which is the Equality and Empowerment Framework, which is also sometimes called the Long Way Framework. So the Harvard Framework, Analysis Framework is really good, especially if your purpose is to understand division of labor, if you want to get a profile, an activity profile of who does what who does what or who has access to what in the community. So if you're thinking about decisions around food, this is a really good one to be able to explore who cooks the food, who makes the decisions around food, who has access to financial resources. This is really, really, really good because it helps you with division of labor, gets an activity profile so that you get an understanding of this kind of consumption area. A second framework to talk about is the Caroline MOSA framework, which looks at, it's also called gender role framework. And this is really very interesting because it gives you the triple roles of men and women in the society. So it asks, what are the productive, reproductive, and community engagement roles for men and women? And this is really, really good in terms of understanding, perhaps you're in a marketplace and you find that women are spending maybe only 3 hours in the marketplace. They come in at 11 and then they leave at 1. So this is really important in helping us understand what are the other roles that women might have. That's why we see them only in 3 hours in the market. Instead of taking a very gender blind approach or gender insensitive approach and saying, oh, women, they don't seem to be serious about coming to the market. They're only here for 3 hours. No, there's something beyond that. Looking at the other invisible roles, the roles that they do at home, at the same time, maybe the community engagement, the domestic chores. This is really good for helping us unpack those invisible roles, the things that don't appear at the forefront. It's also good in helping us to understand helping us to understand things about men as well, like perhaps who is taking who to the, if you want to have some information around nutrition, education, understanding what other roles men have that are not visible to us. So it goes both ways. The third intervention here, or the third analysis tool rather, is on the long way framework, or equality and empowerment framework. And it looks at different areas of equality and empowerment. It gives 5 scores or 5 levels, which looks at welfare, access, concretization, participation, and control. So these areas, you can measure them and to look at the different areas around equality and empowerment. So these tools are useful, and it depends on your own research project and what you want to gain out of it. As we said, maybe you want to find out about the division of labor in the society, then Harvard framework would be the best option for you. If you want to know why certain gender don't appear in an area, then you may want to look at the triple roles to see what are the visible and invisible roles. So depending on your own research purpose or research intervention, you may want to choose this to be able to understand what is the status of men and women in this society, and how can we understand the gender issues they are facing, as well as how can we alter them or address those issues. Now, to see if you are listening and maybe you can earn your lunch, we can have a little bit of a case study here. So I'll read out the case study and you can follow along with me on your screens. We are in the Hongera community. I want you to imagine you're a food and nutritionist, and also some of you very brave people might be a gender expert. So you're in there and you've come to this community and you've understood that from the statistics collected, there are very high levels of vitamin deficiency and malnutrition, especially compared to other adults in other regions apart from the Hongera community. So when you arrive in this community, you do some sort of observation. You see most of the homesteads are occupied by older men, you know. So, and they are being helped, or they're living with younger men as people who are working in the house, and they don't have any immediate family members in this community. So these old men are living with younger house workers, no family members in sight. And these young men prepare very quick meals for the older men, and they leave the food to be eaten by the old men. They don't check to see if it's eaten, they just leave it out. And in addition to that, the young men are quite abusive verbally and physically to the old men when they maybe request for a change in the diet or a change in food items. And so this is what you have noticed as a food and nutritionist, and some of you as gender experts. So you call a community meeting. At this community meeting, you meet with village elders who are mainly also older men, and you relay the situation you noticed. And when you hear the response from these community leaders, you find that many of them, the older men who are left there, were working in faraway urban centers for most of their lives. When they did get time off during Christmas and New Year, they would come to visit their families. But they were not really very close to their wife or children due to these very infrequent visits, but also due to some of the dominant culture in Hongera. And this culture dictates that men should not care for or have anything to do with children. So when the children grow up, they move away. They move out to urban centers or even outside of the community totally altogether. And upon retirement, the men who are working in these urban centers return, but they find it very difficult to acclimatize. They find it difficult to live with their wives, and often a lot of quarrels occur. And as a result, most wives hire these young men to cook and do household chores for these retirees. And the women themselves go visiting their children either in the urban centers or abroad for long periods of time. So that's how these retirees are left on their own. So given that case study, I want us to think a little bit about some of the concepts that you may have learned. So if we can have our poll up, I would like us to think about which gender concept or concept can you identify in the case study? Okay. Right. So it looks like majority of you have answered correctly. It looks like about 36% of us talked about gender issues, and that would be right. Remember, we talked about gender issues being the social constructs or social beliefs that guide behavior in a particular community, and it can have the needs of one gender being met over the other. And that's entirely right. You can see that the belief system around what it means to be a man in Hongera community has colored a lot of what has happened. Firstly, it has made the men not very close with their wives and children. It has made, when they come back to retire, them not close, having the quarrels, and the women also moving out to stay with their children. So you can see that the needs of one gender are being met over the other. And it has also caused issues around even the way the young men treat the older men. Maybe it reminds them of how their own fathers treated them, and it's a chance for them to try and gain back power. So gender issues are abound in Hongera community. Very, very right. I noticed a lot of you have talked of gender analysis. Remember, gender analysis is a tool to be able to identify gender issues or gender disparities or even inequalities. So a gender analysis is just a tool to be able to identify the gender issues. And Harvard analysis and the MOSA framework are tools that you can use in that regard. So thank you for that. Very, very good attempts. I can see we have some couple of questions. So perhaps we can go into that. Given significance of biology. Oh, there's a question. Yeah, given the significance of biology, socioeconomic, and different stages between men and women, how do we incorporate a gender focused approach in nutrition research in terms of effectiveness and interventions and policies? Could you share examples where such an approach has led to improved health outcomes? Excellent question, Anna. That's really, really good. And it reinforces what we discussed. The best way to be able to understand these interventions or to be able to have effective interventions is to be able to undertake a gender analysis at the program start, if possible. To be able to pick out one of these frameworks, or even there's so many. As I mentioned before, there are resources you can find online. So long as you talk of gender analysis frameworks, you can pick one that is suitable to your purpose. So if you want to find out about the roles of men and women in the community, maybe you can use the MOSA. Or if you want to know the way labor is divided, and maybe it relates to your intervention in some way, you want to know who takes care of the wash activities in the home, because you want to know how certain aspects of wash affect nutrition, then you may want to look at the Harvard analysis. So you may want to pick one of these to be able to help you to understand what is the status of this particular area before you apply your intervention, or before even you think about any policy interventions. So I would really encourage you to have a look at these gender analysis frameworks, be familiar with them so that you can be able to apply them at the stages in your work, and then it would be more applicable. So I believe that's my answer. I don't know if there's any other further question before I can hand over to Maureen to look at a particular case study.
We just got a question coming through. Andre Dumas asked, what are the main objectives of a gender analysis? Does gender analysis refer to the understanding of inequalities?
Okay, thank you for that. That's a good question. We talked about gender analysis being a systematic examination of different activities and the roles of men and women in the society, depending on what you need. It will depend on the purpose of your research. I mentioned earlier that if you want to find out about the division of labor, maybe it relates to WASH interventions, and your nutrition research is related to WASH, then you can exercise, maybe have a look at the Harvard analysis. Maybe your intervention or your research is about markets and the time spent in markets, why men and women have different amounts of time in the market. You are perplexed. Why do women only spend 3 hours in the market, yet men are spending 8 hours, and they have different access to different food or different resources? Maybe you want to use the MOSA framework because it looks at the different roles of men and women, invisible and visible roles which influence this. So it really depends on your purpose, your own research objectives. Your research objectives will inform the kind of analysis that you need. So there's no specific objective that you say for gender analysis. It depends on your objective with why you use a particular framework. I don't know if that answers your point. Yes, I can see a question on reinforcing. How do we avoid reinforcing traditional norms? Again, it goes back to what we said. What is the purpose of your research? What do you want to get out of it? Is part of the traditional norms, are those the gender issues you want to address? So it goes back again to what is your research objective? How can you respond to that research objective? Are you using a gender analysis framework to avoid perpetuating certain norms or even making it worse? Thank you for that. Excellent questions. You've earned your lunch. Bye.
Thank you, Lanoy. Thank you so much for enabling us to understand how we can integrate gender into nutrition. So we have a case study, one of our projects under Patch Farm. They did a country case study. And this research group, they were trying to understand the drivers for accessibility to nutritious foods among low-income groups. And this one, somebody was just asking, how do we incorporate gender-focused approach in nutrition research? So this project, actually, they looked at policy. So I think I wanted to add that maybe you can look at policies. So this project also looked at policies. And this is how they did it. Maybe it can really help. If we see how they approach the whole situation, it can really help us to understand this. So initially we said, when you're trying to link gender and nutrition in your research, nutrition research or food environment research, you really need to select your team, project team members. And in this team, you can see it is multidisciplinary. So we said we need a multidisciplinary team, and we also need a gender responsive team. So in this case, you can see in this project team, we have an agribusiness management expert, we have a biodiversity expert, we have a gender expert, we have an agricultural economics and development expert. We also had an agricultural economics policy expert, and we also have a food nutrition and dietetics expert. So what we're saying is that when you're coming up with a project, you need to really look at your team members. Are they going to provide the expertise? You're trying to link nutrition, gender, and also in nutrition economic analysis, do we have people who can really contribute to this so that we have improved nutrition and health outcomes? So for this project, these team members were examining the drivers, I've said, and they were doing a case study in Kenya and Malawi, and these were their specific objectives. The first part of their project was to review existing policies. They were looking at the policy landscape for access to nutritious foods in the two countries. They were also analyzing the stakeholder perspectives also to access, in terms of access and consumption of nutritious foods in Kenya and Malawi. And they were looking at it by gender. Everything was a gendered approach. And also the last part was more of qualitative. They were looking at the gender analysis now. They did a gender analysis around access to fish, around access to fruits and vegetables, and also around consumption of fruits and vegetables. Just to help us to really see how these approaches can really help us in programming. Yeah, for their methodology, it was a cross-sectional study. So the first part, they did a scoping review. So in this scoping review, they're looking at the policies in Kenya and Malawi, that is food and nutrition policies. They also looked at gender policies. They even looked at the agriculture policies, yeah, all the policies around food. And they also looked at the reviewed original articles between, I think, 2015 to 2020, this is 2024, right? Yeah, to be able to understand the policy environment. Then also, they also did collective qualitative data, that is focus group discussions. They also had interviews with the key informant around in the markets and also in the counties. They also did a consumer survey. And in this study, they were targeting formal and informal markets, and they used for the tools, they used the consumer questionnaire, focus group discussions, key informant interview guides, and observation guides. And the case study was in Kenya. They've already collected data in Kenya. They're yet to collect data in Malawi. And in terms of, they selected 2 counties in Kenya, that is fish markets. So you can see that the fish markets there, and I'll show you some of the photos, and also for fruits and vegetables, they did in Uasin Gishu. These are some of the, how they did the approach. We said when you're integrating gender nutrition, you really need to look at it. So you can see for this research, this group, they looked at the policy landscape, because they were like, and they anchored, actually the work was, the Tan et al. Framework was guiding their work to enable them to understand the drivers of access and consumption of nutritious foods. And from the policy review, they were able to identify some of the drivers to access. And you can see from the left here, they looked at the source and the presence of food product. They were looking at, are there fruits and vegetables available in the market? Is fish available in the markets? And which are these markets? Are they in the formal markets or informal markets? They were also looking at the food. What is the quality? How safe is the food in the market? They also looked at the prices, the physical distance. So they had questions around distance. They also wanted to understand the market dynamics, like at what time do they open the markets? What time do they close markets? So what you're saying is that when you're doing such kind of research, you also need to, if you want to really like integrate nutrition and gender, you have to start from the policy level. Are the policies gender transformative? Are they gender responsive? Are they nutrition sensitive like that? So they did that, and I hope that by next year, they should be able to share the work so that we can see how they've been able to look at the nutrition and health policies in the 2 countries and inform policy. Then I can see another example that they also applied the World Health, the WHO gender assessment tool. And these are some of the policy documents, the 2 policy documents that they use. And in this WHO gender assessment tool, we have 23 questions. So the questions you just answer the document, like for example, here we have the Malawi National Multi-Sector Nutrition Policy 2018 to 2022. So you review the policy and answer the questions. Are they available? Just like this, if you can see question number 4, sort of 5, 6, and 7, you notice that, like for example, have women and men participated in the following steps? That is the steps in policy event development or implementation. Yes or no? Nothing. So you can, and then here you can see, does the policy program consider life conditions and opportunities for women and men? You can see in Malawi it was yes, in Kenya it was no. So this is a very good tool that you can use. Actual policies, are they involving men and women in all stages of policy development? So these researchers looked at this. Then also in the retail markets, remember earlier we talked about you need to select the right tools and metrics like that. You can see these are the markets. So these are like fruits and vegetables for this study. You can be able to, if you use the gendered approach, you should be able to understand. Like for these ones, for example, if you look at the infrastructure here, with like these farmers, these retail markets in Eldoret, for example, they do not market location. The farmers, the retailers were saying, actually, this market is not strategically located like that. So we are not able to even take our produce. We don't have enough roads. We don't have enough water supply. We have poor drainage systems like that. So you see, by collecting such kind of data, informed policy policy so that they are able to know, county government can know what to do when it comes to improving the availability and even access to fruits and vegetables in that. Or you can see here from the other photo, you can see that we do not have, you can see the pineapples are just brought, the suppliers bring the pineapples and they just put it on the floor or even there. So it's, and even spoilage like that. And then also in this study, they also note, you can see also the vegetables here, they are not, there's no, it can really tell you that the retailers did not even have enough space to place their fruits and vegetables. Then also, they also say there's no value addition of fruits and vegetables, which means that they do not really, we are likely to have more losses. This is for the fish fruit for this group. You can see again for, yeah, and it was really gendered, and you'll find that most it's when it comes to the fish being received, yeah. So you can do a gender analysis from when it's from fishing all the way when the fish arrives at the market. And like this, like now you can see here, the frank space is not even enough. It's the women who do, you can see a lot of smoke, it's not safe. Yeah, you can see the place where the storage space for the fish is not clean, it's not safe. You can even look at issues around quality. Yeah, if you remember the dimensions you're talking about, if you're using the same, evaluating the food environment framework to evaluate the external domains and all those the personal domains. External domains are those ones that really, like the market in itself, environment itself. Yeah, like the vendor herself here. You can see these ones. They do not have even adequate space to do the deep frying. And even when it comes to deep frying, they do not have adequate knowledge, nutrition knowledge, or any information around, like if you repeat, have degradation, and it can have undesirable effects on the fish. So, and then you can see here also, they had data around on, this is how you can see here, the markets don't have adequate display units for fish fillets or even the racks. So that's just, I just wanted to highlight that. And when it comes to retail market domains like affordability, desirability, they also looked at that. And they also, this project also looked at gender analysis. So for them now, they use the Harvard. I think Lanoi talked about, you can use Harvard gender analytical framework to really understand activities in the market. For example, who are doing what? Is it the men? Is it the women? Is it the girls? Is it the boys? Who does the activities around transportation of fruits and vegetables? Who does preparation? Who is involved in meetings, for example? Is it the men and women? So this researchers try to look at that. And when it comes to access and control profile, who does it? Is it the men, all the resources? When it comes to markets, when it comes to nutrition information, like is it the men and women? So Harvard can also help you do that. And also, like we saw, infrastructure is a constraint. What are the opportunities? These gender analytical tools really help you to identify some of the constraints and even the opportunities that can inform even interventions or policy at policy level. So these are some of the policy implications that this research gave us. Like, for example, I said the gender integration into national and food policy is really very important, that we really invest in the market infrastructure, capacity building, or even community nutrition outreach programs. And that is it. And I think, thank you so much. And I hope you learned something from our learning lab. We started by looking at the food environment framework, and we also looked at some of the nutrition metrics, or those ones that you can use to evaluate food environment. We also integrated nutrition and gender. I'll welcome Mark, maybe if he has any closing remarks before we end our session. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Maureen, for that insight on the project. Before I finally close, I think we can have Lanoi to make a final remark, and then I will close. Welcome.
Yes, I can see there's a question that came after I finished my session. Somebody was asking, in your experience, what are the most significant challenges in ensuring that gender perspectives within diverse cultural contexts are represented in research? And how can researchers researchers address this? I'm really glad you asked this question, because sometimes colleagues don't understand why you look at the position of your team. Why should you have a gender expert on your team? These are the ways to bridge those kind of issues around diversity, because not only is the gender specialist bringing a certain lens to your work, but also having diverse team members. So if you look at your gender, your composition of your research team and notice that you're all men, or sometimes even when you're all women, well, it's important when we're doing gender work to ensure we have a gender balanced team. We are bringing different ways or lenses to the work, but also we're incorporating gender specialists. We have food and nutrition, we have food, we have also agricultural economists to have that diversity lens. So I'm really glad you asked that question. Yes, so I think we've clarified that. Otherwise, I really enjoyed your participation. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Lanoy. I think we are at the tail end of our learning lab. We are so grateful to have had you here for 2 hours. When we began, we thought, well, this is a lot of time. What will we do with all this? But I'm glad that we have engaged throughout. So we are very happy that you joined us. Some people asking how we can be reached. Let one of our colleagues type our emails there. I can be reached at mark.korir@arcafrica.org. We also have maureen.cheserek@arcafrica.org, lanoy.malloy@arcafrica.org, among others. We also have other emails. Once you get to reach one of us, we are going to address your issue. Otherwise, I think we will have another opportunity, come another learning lab next year, and we'll be very happy to continue the discussion so that we can, infuse particularly gender into our research, so that we are transformative, we are able, to reach each and every marginalized group, so that we are all better people for a better planet. I think with that, I say thank you very much. Thank you, IT team. Thank you, ANH, for all the support, and we are very, very happy. God bless you. Thank you.